made last spring or over the summer about how to succeed in the remote learning environment. And I also took the opportunity to subtly tell them some things about mindset that I really believe and say, this can be about what worked for you or what didn't work for you. Both are useful things to learn about yourself. So I'm also subtly telling them about growth mindset and how much I value that. For participation surveys that happened right after an exam, I would ask questions that are sometimes referred to as exam wrappers. And exam wrappers could be something that like, which of the following did you do to prepare for the exam? And I would give them options like go to office hours, read the textbook, etc. So on these surveys, I would typically ask between like 8 and 14 questions, depending on how complicated the questions were. And the students had about 6 days to do the surveys. And lastly, I want to mention something that really kind of helped the third assessment I'm going to talk about. I would ask students for input on an assignment and or a rubric. So here's a question that I talked about. I said, we will have an infographic project where you pick an enzyme and you design an infographic about it. And so I asked them, I want to get your ideas on what you think should be in this project. What you write will help me then build the instructions for the assignment. So I was crowdsourcing the creation of the assignment. And then I asked another question in that same survey, for this assignment, how do you think it should be graded? What are some of the things that you think should be in the rubric? And then I'll build the rubric from your suggestions. So this was a great way to bring some student-centered design into the class. And they really appreciated any effort that I put out that showed that I cared, that I wanted to bring their thoughts and their ideas into the classroom. People were very appreciative, and it really created a lot of great rapport and goodwill. And so this takes me to the third type of idea for assessment that I wanted to share with you, and that's that infographic that I just referenced. So I asked students to create an infographic, and so this is a visual way to show information. And I asked them to do it for a specific audience, other classmates, non-scientists. It'll depend from quarter to quarter. And this is an assignment I've had when we were in person, and I've modified it to be online by providing a lot more online support, inviting a librarian to come and give a talk and a workshop about how to use resources from the library to do the research for your infographic. And so I've cycled through a lot of different ideas for the infographic, like a spotlight on an enzyme or my favorite metabolite. In one class, I asked students, what things are you interested in metabolism, and turn that into a question. And so I got all 300 students' questions, and with the help of a TA, we curated that into a list of 40 questions, and you can pick any of those questions to do an infographic on. And that was really fun because people really got to go into stuff that they cared about, and they got to see what their classmates cared about too. And again, I asked students, what should be on the infographic? How should I grade it? At the end of the day, I was the one writing the instructions and the rubric, but it was really informative and helpful to get that input. And so this is just a little example of what some of the infographics look like. Real colorful, real unique. These all three were made with a website called PictoChart, which is free if you have just a regular account. But students used all sorts of different softwares or websites, and I gave them support on that as well. And so hopefully something that I mentioned triggered some inspiration for you or was helpful to you. And I do want to invite you, feel free to reach out and email me at any time between now and until the end of time if you have ideas or want to get some inspiration or want more information about this. And I'll pass it over at this point to Funman.
Hello, Mona, do you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, all right. So, well, maybe I could share screen. Would that be all right?
Please do.
Okay, here it is.
I think it should be set up so you can.
Okay, do you see my screen, Ellie?
Now I do, yes.
Okay, is it now the PowerPoint presenter mode, Ellie?
Yes, now it is.
Okay, all good. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ellie and Melissa, for hosting these workshops here. I've joined a few times ago, and I find that this is very informative. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to participate now as a speaker. So my name is Funman Fong. I'm from NUS, Singapore here, and today I want to share a bit of ideas in adapting authentic assessment in the new normal here. So I teach chemistry and the science of learning here. Right, and you can follow some of my posts and sharings on Twitter. This is the hashtag. So my session will be a bit more interactive, so get ready your personal devices here. There'll be a poll for you. Now, what is authentic assessment here, right? I would like to share why is it better? Because we focus on analysis applications, and you also maintain some exam integrity. I like to reframe that, with this new normal here, the focus should be how we reinvent ourselves as an educator rather than the focus on how to prevent learners from cheating. The other thing is, right, if we curate our exams or even activities for learning better, we can allow the learners to synthesize the knowledge rather than just memorize it from a sponge. And lastly, this is where we help them to become future ready, to prepare for the workforce and prepare for don't know what's going to come. So we see this photo here, right? A question for all of you here. We have got about 51 participants. Why would our grandchildren's generation think this photo is strange? Okay, so all of you, if you can go poll everywhere here, just type this. You can use a phone. Yeah. Feel free. We don't know who you are. Just interesting to know. Just share. There's no right answer. In fact. And that's the beauty of it. Come. Are you able to?
I just put the link in the chat if that's easier to copy and paste.
Thanks, Ellie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So let's go back to this picture here. Allow people to see. Okay. Hang on. Why would our grandchildren's generation or the future generation thinks this photo is strange? You see people here sitting down in a grid fashion on the desk, looking down. There are no devices. You can, I plan to, have a star upvote or downvote here. If you have a similar sentiment, just upvote it, right? Yes, right? There are no electronic devices. Where are all the PLDs, person learning devices? Because in that time, I foresee that everybody will take the exam using some mobile devices, right? Exactly, they might not recognize a pen and paper anymore. What else is that? What else is that? Notes, I like this. Not spaced 2 meters apart, right? Yeah, or maybe, yeah, okay. So you see, this kind of questions is something you all might want to explore here. Now, there are so many possible answers, right? Well, in my mind, I was thinking that why aren't the people wearing no mask? I thought everybody should be in mask, right? Or why are they even congregating together? Other exams are supposed to be taken at home, right? Individually, I don't see my friends. It scares me. Okay, good. Thank you. So keep it coming. It's still running the poll here, but I want to say that due to last year's event is extraordinary, this is not so possible. And that's why it's time for us to reimagine some of the assessment here. So I'd like to talk about, just a bit before this year here, what happened was for my large classes for this freshman organic chemistry course at NUS, we converted from the exam that we couldn't do because of distancing. We had the online and home-based assessment, right? So we trust the students, but also we plot some measures here to minimize cheating. And the way to do it is if you have certain questions that's so open, right? There's a possible answers. It makes our job harder to mark, but I think it's better for the learners. So we will upload this assessment about, in this longer time frame for them to download, print out, really write, because they're still used to pen and paper at the time. And then give them a bit more time to submit it to the learning management system here, and then we will mark it. So other faculties in my university postpone or cancel assessment because they just thought they couldn't have anything useful. But I don't think this is nice to them here, right? So in all these ways here, there are always challenges. I will show briefly about this paper later on for you to read after this. Now, so with all these challenges, it's time to reimagine assessment methods. But before that, we know that, right? Also turn back to Mona Fred's talk about there are two main kinds of assessment. One's the formative assessment, one's the summative assessment, right? So this picture is really thanks to Ali and Melissa here sending all these very useful knowledge. Like, what is formative assessment? It's a bit low stake, right? We give them some points, but students don't fear of making mistake. Could be the surveys or little quizzes, through the semesters here, to just gauge that they're following, they're on track. And to use the metaphor, it's like when you cook, you're a chef and you're the chef, taste the soup. Sample it, that's okay. And then finally, at the end of the semester, when the guest tastes the soup, it has to be very good and ready. And this is like a final exams. Okay. Now, I have just two points to share here. This is something that I've tried, and pretty useful. Number one is how I apply a team-based learning as a form of a summative assessment. And also to implement kind of non-closed questions, these open-ended questions here for learners to learn here. And you can see that this bottom picture here is really about this team-based learning. So also to fulfill something that's more global, because we know this April is really it just happened. I mean, April, we gathered educators from around the world here. Now, to contextualize the crisis that has united or even divided the whole populations in the world here, it has to refer to something that's of a higher agenda. And this is what our learners who's in their teens, they are very curious about. What they are learning is relevant to the world's problem. They want to make themselves useful. So the first part is, right, in my formative assessment, I group them in teams here. Right, I will always have teams that they choose their friends to maintain the social presence, right, so that they do not feel lonely. So I find that when they're in groups of 4 to 5 here, they're able to really turn on their webcam and speak so much. And especially in the Asian countries where voicing out is not a very common sight, but they are able to see it. And it's also important for the lecturers like us to just jump in a couple of minutes to just say hello, make sure that they feel your teacher's presence, right? And when you give them together with these open-ended questions, the discussions are just so vivacious, and you want it to happen here. And because they're so used to these kind of questions here that it's open, they think more critically, and in the exam-wise, they do it alone, right? But because they're trained, to discuss and think in that manner, their fear is not about getting the right answer, but just say, how may I be creative and solve a problem? And they love it. They love it because it's more on applications of the knowledge and analysis, right? So we tie back to the United Nations SDG, the 17 goals here, and they find it very meaningful because it's something that is not just textbook, but how it can work for their country, like in this case, Singapore, and also in a set way to the world here. And how we can prepare our students for this assessment is that really, as far as I say, you foster a team. When you have teamwork, people will want to contribute. They don't fear about being just lonely, especially now, right? And you let them choose a group. One thing I learned that in 2 years ago, I tried to foster diversity, but it didn't help. In fact, it was so hard for them to make friends, and it didn't help me. But the next year, like last year, I learned my lessons. So you let them find their friends. There might be a couple of students who, they don't know anybody, and then you have to put them together, and they feel very good together. And then we give them questions, give them about half an hour of breakout rooms, and we are going to do that later on. So we walk the talk together in this session, right? And then we discuss some of their ideas about how to go about solving them. And they're really delighted. So what kinds of open-ended questions that we could use, right? Focus on these two parts here. in the lectures, I use a flipped classroom model here. They know the contents, but we trust that they read it, either the books or the videos here. But how do they make use of this knowledge to apply to the learning, right? So we give them a lot of real world problems here, and we contextualize it to the region, in this case, Southeast Asia, Singapore, or even to the larger world. So example from my assessment here. So I will give them, this is a small island outside Singapore here where we have part of a landfill. You give them, you see this question to Pulau Semakau. Pulau means island here, right? It's located somewhere. This is real. So they know, they heard about it. Maybe they have not seen there, they have not stepped into there, so you got to contextualize it, right? And this is a real thing that was told, government says it, and there's some part of the climate issues we experience, and we ask them, are there ways you can apply this course? I teach environmental chemistry, right? How do you put it knowledge into solving problems? Right? And the other thing is, if you see question 1 here, we give them graph, right, about this kind of capital waste generations here, the trends, and how we can produce some possible answers, and think about in the future decade forward how you might able to try to mitigate these issues here. So this is the graph, right? And these are facts from EPA from the US, and students like it because this is real data, and they're trying to apply knowledge that it just doesn't make sense for them to communicate with their friends to cheat, right? Because it's not like there's a real answer, like I draw a benzene ring and there's C6H6. Okay, so they feel that, oh, it's just about reasoning. Now, the second example is this small Singapore, how we talk about contextualizing to the local problem, to your states, to your country. I show 2 diagrams. So this is really from last year, September 15th, very recent. At the time, this assessment was in just a week after. Lim Chu Kang, a small district in Singapore here, there's a lot of farms, and the government really put out news on the local news that, these plots of land are for tender, right? For what kind of farms you can promote urban farming. And we have like animal farming, and of course we have the vegetation farming, in how do you decide, right, which plot of land is better using your knowledge from the environmental chemistry, right? So they love it because they know that this is really something that could be taken into considerations, and they argue, they write essays. They write essays in the science courses, which they find that this is so strange. They haven't been able to do that. They thought science exams like right or wrong, yes or no, right? Yeah, they struggle, but they like it because this is very open and fair for everybody. It's not just about how much you memorize. So these are just 2 samples of the authentic assessment I've experienced, and I got really good teaching feedback for that, because they find that it's about analyzing, about thinking more critically here, about solving a real problem, and they find that the exam integrity is maintained. No point to cheat, and there's no way to cheat because it's open-ended, like a social science course, right? So I'm really applying some learning sciences pedagogy methods here, and students love it if we don't treat them like a sponge of knowledge. And lastly, of course, these problems link to world problems. They can go to the workforce. They may not be chemists, and I'm not sad about that, but I know that I've trained them to think critically and know how to make better decisions by being aware of how to solve problems more creatively. So remember, why do you think that future generations think that photo here is strange, right? It's because of what you told us, which means that it's now time for us all to reimagine our authentic assessment. These are some of the articles. Yeah, you can take a look here, our experience from Singapore and how we promote active learning online here. Yeah, and with that, I thank you very much for your time. You can follow me, stay connected, then you have more debate and discussion and share good ideas together. I love to work with collaborators around the world. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. Lots of really great ideas from our 2 experts today. And what I want to say I really love is that you've both given us practical applications, and you've shared with us how you've used them and integrated them into your teaching in very thoughtful ways. Thank you. We're going to go into breakout rooms now, and the questions that we have for you in your breakout rooms, we'll give you about 30 minutes. please go around the breakout room and introduce yourselves. And the prompts that we thought for today were your name, your institution, your discipline, and then something entertaining about you, or some entertainment that you've watched recently, a TV show, podcast, book, or movie. Within your group, select somebody who's going to report out to the larger group, a recorder who's going to help you keep some notes, a timekeeper to watch that 30-minute clock. And then it's always nice to appoint somebody who's going to be the discussion leader, who's going to keep the discussion moving forward. 3 questions for you, which I'll copy and put them in the chat, unless one of the 2 of you can do that while I'm making breakout rooms. So what kind of assessments? You can think about formative and summative. Have you already used in your online classes? Think about the challenges, what works well. What's your dream formative or summative assessment? And then how can you adapt your dreams to the online learning? Let's see, Mona, do you have, oh, I have it easily. I can copy. Oh, you've got it. Okay, great. I am going to put you in breakout rooms. You will have probably 8 or 9 people in your breakout room. I would encourage you to turn on your video if you're in a place where you can do that. Turn on your audio if you're in a place where you can do that, to participate in the conversation. And I'll be available if you need help. There's a way to call for help, and I'll pop around and say hi. Great. Mona, thank you for putting those. Did I give you enough time to get all 3 in the chat? Okay, excellent. I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. Welcome back. I always think you can tell how the discussion is going if people stay for that full 60 seconds. It means that there was a lot to talk about and not enough time. I'm going to turn to my colleagues, Mona and Funman, to lead the discussion, if they would like, or I'm happy to.
Oh yeah.
Mona, you go.
Yeah, thank you. I was still like on a high from the great group conversation I just had. Yeah, so yeah, we want to hear from you all about what you talked about. So let's talk about the first question. What types of assessments, formative and or summative, do you already use online? And we want to know what has worked well and where do you have challenges? So if it's okay if everyone's comfortable with this, would reporters from the group raise their hand and take turns sharing what you talked about in your groups?
Right, to raise hand, right, just go to the bottom, you see participants, right? Then just raise a hand. Oh, you can, reactions, we can see you. I think the presenter is it Tina? Tina's representing the breakout rooms. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'll just give a brief summary and leave more time for the colleagues to join my room to put out more info details. So our room have experts from very different diverse disciplines, from dentists, kindergarten, pharmacy, engineering, and also a fresh graduate students, I believe is based in engineering. So I think they have been discussed, you know, there's a pros and cons of the formative and summative assessments. And for the summative assessment, it's more like the student need to learn fast, respond quick, and then learn it through the ways. And for the formative assessment, it's more like they have time to curate all the learning and knowledge, and then present it in a way it's more like a comprehensive. So some students prefer to do it like small quiz, or so like the lecturers may make the final assessment like as an optional things for students to try to design. And also we for like teaching like PhD students, you know, instead of the assessment, it's more like a weekly or bi-weekly catch up to understanding more deeply about what's their questions and what's their needs to guide them. And for handling the small kids in kindergartens, the teachers might need more rely on the parents to give them the daily updates about how about their kids, so they can feedback to the parents about how to facilitate with dealing with taking care of the kids. So that's what I got. I'm sure the colleagues there, I think Michael, Catherine, Han, or Kenzo, please joining if you want to share more. Thanks.
Yeah, I think to add on to Tina's sharing, I will also just say that despite the challenges that comes about with moving assessments online, I think there are many pros that we reap in the process as well. I think it's certainly a process where some of us as educators are challenged or forced in some ways to really think about how to make our assessments more application based, which based on our student Kenzo's input is something that students appreciate very much as well. And this is really partly to circumvent the issue of academic integrity, to make sure that the questions that we are asking are not simply ones that someone can simply Google answers online, but rather requires students to think critically and come up with their own novel responses, which is what it should be for assessments in the first place.
Thank you, Hans, for this elaboration from our group. And someone rose their hand. Fritz, are you there? Are you ready to share your group's findings?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone from the Philippines. So I'm Fitz. I am about to share what we had discussed with our groups. Actually, we were not able to answer all of the questions because of we had some fun introducing ourselves. So my group members were from a long range of from elementary teacher to graduate school professor. Some did not have any experience with online teaching. However, we were able to share, and some maybe I think we had PhD students as well in our room. What we were able to answer was the question number one, which is the type of assessment. But before we discussed it, we raised the different challenges that we had during online teaching and learning. So some shared that they had to do recordings of their lectures and give it to the students prior to the synchronous sessions so that they may be able to learn from it prior and maybe during the synchronous discussions with them is just to answer some queries and raise concerns for the maybe unclear topics that they had. We had also a participant, Gina from Hong Kong, that she mentioned that they already started their online classes before the pandemic hits because of the experience with the protests, as you may have heard the news. So in terms of the assessment, one shared Erlinda earlier that she actually did not do much of the quizzes and examinations. Rather, she based her assessment on the outputs that is produced by the students. Especially, she is teaching research, so we know that the output of the research should be the base of um, assessment. In my experience, what I did is that uh, I did also the synchronous and asynchronous recordings of my lecture. And during the assessment, during the synchronous session, I included what you have discussed earlier during the session, which is the participation surveys. So I did some multiple choices questions. Then it will be in a kind of a poll, so that the students, we may see how many answered letter A, letter B, and after posting that, we discuss which is correct and why it is not correct. No? And lastly, one shared, Wendy, that maybe this platform by APRU can be we can use this to raise concerns specifically in identifying the right or maybe proper pedagogical way of teaching and learning in this online, because this was raised because of the challenges that we had experienced at the start of online teaching and learning because of the hit of the pandemic. So that's from our group. Sorry, we were not able to finish questions 2 and 3.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was very helpful. I see appreciation from Roy and a hand. Roy, would you like to unmute?
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, we had fun sharing a while ago with my group. And some even, I think that was Mom who mentioned that one of her questions raised. Oh, Mom Erlinda Palaganes is here. This is a good friend of mine. Okay, in our university, Natida University, can I show you how we're doing it? Can I share my screen?
Yeah, I think it's open, so you could share your screen.
Okay, and this is how we're doing it actually. In our university, this is one of the samples of what we're doing. At university, we have, of course, we're using Moodle. We have this one of my courses. Actually, this is a group. I already put up my link for our Zoom because I'm using Zoom. Some are using the big blue button embedded in our LMS. Some are using Google Meet. This is how it looks like. We placed our OIDP, our online individual online instructional development plan, our classroom rules. We have our attendance. This is a sample of our H5P. Okay, in which, of course, if you're going to click it, it'll direct you to this one. Okay, so you'll be able to see how you're going to it's an active interactive video. If you're going to click it, okay, you'll be able to see the definition. We all know that if it goes here, H5P, you see that those dots, you'll be able to pause for a moment and see a definition. We actually we did set up this LMS of ours, so everything is here for our quizzes. There, our students actually enjoyed a lot. Why? Because there are some interactive engagements as well. Okay, like for instance, we have that was in the other what do you call this? We have a drag and drop complete paper sequencing, so you'll be able to how to work on it. And Actually, this is just just a very few of those things that we're doing with our students, and they really enjoyed it a lot. Okay, we have even set up either a memory game, some sort. So it's some sort of a performance appraisal as well, and can be used as a what we call this, a formative assessment, a form of formative assessment. We have, as mentioned in our group just a while ago, we also make use. There are a lot of things you can do with H5P, to cut it short, and our students really are enjoying that one. And of course, for the quizzes, there are a lot of quizzes you can, in the quiz, you can set up, it may be an essay form, okay? In the essay format, you can actually ask them their personal views, but you really have to set up well, because if you cannot set up, especially the grading, then you come up with a very difficult in the end of grading it, because you have to set up your grade as well. Okay, and we also use forums in which they can actually, the students can actually interact with each other, and you'll be able to see how they're feeling, what are their insights about their learning, and well, exchanges of a lot of things. I guess that would be all for our group.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's so nice to see the diversity of ways that you're allowing students to interact with the content and each other. So thank you for sharing, doing the screen share and letting us actually see the information as well. I want to ask for someone to share about the dream question. So what are your dream assessments? Like, you know, given that things are going to be, limits are removed, what kind of assessments would you like to do ideally? So go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to share some of the dreams that came up in your groups as you chatted.
I wonder if most groups just talked about the first question, just talked about the challenges and successes so far. Did anyone get to that second question about dreams?
Yeah, our group actually get through that. So if I remember correctly, Maria raised a good point that she's dreaming to have assessment that's kind of course, easy for us to grade, especially with a large lecture, but yet still have, we can access their deep learning. So, and my personal dream is to make assessment in terms of student learning journal. So that's my dream, but I don't know if that would be something that practical to a large lectures. I can try, I'm trying right now, but fortunately I have a small lectures this semester. I don't know, anything else I missed, Mona? And
yeah, I guess I was in the same group, and I think we tried lots of things, but your dream is constrained by two things. First of all, my ability to mark them all, because we don't have TA systems like many of you in the US do. So the marking falls on me. And although my class this year was only 75, it still took me about a week to mark the midterm with open-ended questions, because, well, it took me about a week to make the exam because I had to learn how to write this kind of exam. And then as we talked about, I then had to Google all the questions to make sure that the question wasn't already out there for them to copy and paste. And then it did take about 5 days of marking to do that. So I would love to be able to do that, but I don't want to have to do that ever again, because, you know, as a research professor, I do have other things I'm meant to be doing as well. So that was a constraint, but also I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand, and we have a very wide diversity of socio-economic so there's equity issues. So when we went into lockdown in New Zealand very suddenly, the first thing the university did was buy 800 laptops, which they distributed to some of our lower socio-economic households, so that some people had nothing. They had nothing to work off. And when we're thinking about assessment too, we have to think about the worst case scenario, which is that they don't have internet at home, that they have to go outside the public library to get free wireless to actually do the online test, and that they're doing it on their phone. So that's our worst case scenario. So I think that's really something to think about. And you know, H5P is fantastic if you're on a laptop at home with good broadband, but it's pretty crap if you're trying to use some crappy old Samsung phone or small tablet. It's quite hard to interact with if you've not got good internet. So I think as educators, it's really important that we consider equity in access to all of the resources, because online tests are great if you have the resources, but we don't want to exclude people from doing that. So for example, I'm hoping not to teach online this semester. I'm hoping to be teaching in person, but I'm still going to actually have an online test, just because Easter is in a really bad position for us in terms of the semester. It's really hard for us to have in-person tests. So I'm going to do it online, but I've booked a computer lab for anybody who doesn't have good internet access, so that they can come and do that on campus on a university computer. So I think that our dream assessment needs to equate with the resources and realities of the students who are having to do this, because we don't want to disadvantage students who, for not their fault, don't have the best computer in the world.
Mary, thank you for raising those real equity issues as we think about all of the teaching that we're doing, because it's real for all of us. So thank you. I want to be careful of the time and realize that it's 1/2 the hour, and maybe some of you who have things that you need to go and do next. I know I can stay a little bit longer. There's a couple of hands still raised. I'm happy to stay and chat with people a little bit longer, but leave when you need to. And the other thing that I want to share is that Melissa and I have just been talking about launching a next series in February, March, and April. We'll do one again each of those months. We'll be in touch soon with more information.
And also, if you have any particular topics that you'd like to see for those, feel free to reach out and let us know. So thank you to Ellie, Mona, and Funman for facilitating this wonderful. I have a lot of, I've taken notes, and I have lots of things I'm going to do to implement in my courses this semester. So thank you, and thank you very much to all of you who have attended. It was wonderful to hear all of your perspectives and experiences, and I hope you'll join us as we continue this series. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So I acknowledge there might be a little bit of a transition here as people are heading off to the next part of their day. Mona and Funman, what's your time like? Can you stay a little longer, or do you need to run?
I can stay. I mean, I hope, yeah, we can take a photo with those who can turn on the webcam, and I will stay. Okay. I can stay for a while.
Okay, great. Well, I think it'd be great too to hear from Kenzo and Arlinda. So I'll go back to letting you two.
Well, yeah, I think I saw Kenzo's hand first. So go ahead and unmute, and we'd love to hear your share.
Okay. Hi, so I was actually just sharing in my breakout room earlier about my dream assessment, and coming from a student's perspective, I think one of the issues I faced was actually having to memorize and regurgitate all the information out during assessments. So actually what I would like is for assessments to be more application-based or maybe perhaps more hands-on. Actually, something that I realized in a lot of my modules is that a lot of the hands-on experiments and projects don't really carry as much weight as the actual assessment itself. So actually maybe having a shift in the weightage, or maybe having more emphasis on the application and actual like working on the, because in the real world you'll be working on stuff and applying your knowledge. So having more emphasis on that would actually be more helpful, I think.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your perspective, because it is so important to get it from the student perspective too, and to hear the importance of application of the knowledge. So thank you for sharing. And Erlinda, go ahead and unmute, and we'd love to hear what your share is.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I do agree with Kenzo. Actually, I think we have the same thinking. But my dream basically is, I just wish to go away with the numerical grading. To give a 1, 1.25. I think this is the time, I guess, that we assess students based on how much, or even us as teachers, how much knowledge and skills have we given our students to, you know, to live, to cope with the situation, to something that's, as Kenzo has mentioned, something that's practical, something that's, you know, how we can have in a class that we get to show how we care for each other, linking the topic to, you know, well-being, the mental health of our students, because it's really real. The inequity is really real. So that's my dream. I mean, you know how we faculty members of my university raised the issue of just giving a pass and a fail, or pass and fail. It was a huge debate. I don't know, but that's my dream. I just wanted, I don't know what the others think about it, but I don't think this is really the time to, you know, to give a 1, a 1.2 for a numerical grade or ABC. I want something that will really give our students to cope with this, what is happening, and have a healthy life. And, you know, because we're just putting too much pressure to our students with what is already happening, with all the inequities happening. As mentioned by our colleagues a while ago, they can't even have access to internet. They couldn't even have access to laptops, and they share laptops and everything. It's just too much. I mean, I think we need to think of assessing our students in a more, you know, humane and innovative way. Thank you.
So I just put a couple of resources. I just put the name of Mastery Grading in the chat and one quick resource about it. The resource that I found is for primary students, but I do have a colleague who teaches math. He teaches calculus and math. So he's teaching at college level, and he does everything based on mastery grading. So it gets away from the points, and it gets to, there are these 10 skills that you need to learn in this chapter. If you learn 8 of them, you're ready to go on to the next one. So I have not done it myself. It seems like it could take away a lot of that concern about which number does a student get. Has anyone here tried it?
Thank you. That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erlinda. That's that's like a beautiful sentiment too, I think, to express, because I feel like it's compassionate and humane. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we all of us were drawn to teaching for, that, you know, the human connection. And so thank you for bringing that up. Would anyone else like to share before we conclude the night? or the day. As I say every time I teach, I feel like I learned more than I taught. So again, in this session, I was an honor to be a presenter, but it was even more of an honor to learn from my group and from all of you. So thank you so much.
Yes, just one comment, because one of the things that I found the hardest is I had to deliver laboratories, which would have been, in person, and they had to dissect things and look at things down the microscopes and all those kind of things. And so we had to come up with an innovative way of delivering that material. And then I gave them a graded quiz. So that was part of the assessment for the lab. In an in-person situation, we'd often get them to hand in lab drawings or part of their lab notebooks, but this wasn't really possible because we couldn't guarantee that the students were doing everything at the same time. They didn't have to because the resource was there and they could do it whenever. And the practical questions that we asked were very much mastery kind of questions like you were talking about. Do I understand this and all that kind of stuff? I was really, really happy because I think the students actually learned a lot better from this kind of testing and approach than they had from just what we used to do in the lab before. So I just had a quick look at what you posted, Ali, and it wasn't as formal or as fancy as that, but I think it was essentially doing a similar thing, making sure that they understand where they had got to. And the feedback that we got at the end of the semester was that they really enjoyed that. They felt that they had sort of completed a task because there was it would have been a 3-hour lab, and then they had, in the next 24 hours, they had to do this test. So they had plenty of time, they could accommodate their schedule, but then, yeah, it was really quite a mastery thing. And most of the students got like 90% or above, and that was much, much higher than they would have got in our regular kind of assessment. So it can work, but it is quite a lot of work to get it all set up. But I suppose once you've done it once, it would work from one year to the next. So let's hope this virus or the next one will we can use what we can build on what we've already developed in terms of our assessment, because a lot of these things doesn't matter if you use them for next year, really.
I think that's so true. I also have to say I love it when I try something because my gut tells me it's the right thing and then there's evidence to back it up. So I always really like that. Fun man, we got to do the photo.
Yes, we have to.
Here.
Can we have everybody who can turn on their webcam just briefly? We can capture this lovely moment here. Remember, it's the first workshop, right, Ellie, of this 2021.
It is the first one of 2021. Yeah. Yes.
Special. Rashi, are you there? There you are. Anybody, just come in. Have a good smile. Oh.
Great.
Yeah. Branderson, Eligio, ready? Who's taking photo? Ellie, are you doing that?
I'll do it. You can do it too. You can both do it.
Everybody just smile and then cancel do that too.
Okay, I got one. Great. Thank you. It is such a privilege to get to share time with all of you and think about teaching and think about all the great innovation that you're doing at each of your individual institutions for your students, and just think collectively how we're supporting our students through what continues to be a really difficult time.
Yeah, thanks very much. I've learned a lot, and I couldn't come to the second one, but I've learned a lot and lots of writing notes.
Okay, well, good. We'll keep the conversation going in February. Are there any other closing thoughts? Any other burning questions before we close today? No? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mona and Funman, thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for the
you.
invite.
You're
Okay.
welcome. You're welcome. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording.